many dreams, Italian sports cars, British classics, and others that personify wealth, good taste, and power. But while many people admire these automobiles, and a few make it their hobby to collect cars of various makes, designs, and decades, we tend not to think of the automobile as a form of art or a piece of history, a history that can only be truly appreciated in a collection. This is the role that automobile museums fulfill, a place where one can grasp the evolution of the automobile, from horse-drawn carriages and early primitive cars, to the classic designs of the 30s, the sleek American cars of the 40s, finned wonders of the 50s, and the machines of other decades.
Although we can't present the entire history of each model, we can give a glimpse of, the different decades and the different styles and designs.
The Sarasota Classic Car Museum is the third oldest automobile museum in the United States. But this museum, like others of its type in this country, is suffering from a decline in attendance and recently had financial challenges. John Christian, the museum director, has many theories for the decline in the popularity of automobile museums.
I think you can also look at the amount of collector enthusiasts who only collect one or two vehicles, and the amount of automobile shows around in every town and every community, or any given weekend there is an auto club or a Corvette show or this show or an AACA show, and these enthusiasts get together and they bring their cars to a park or to a parking lot, which a lot of the strip malls are promoting because it brings customers to the mall at this point, and people visit there and they may see 15, 20 Model Ts or this and that, but they're not seeing what we like to call a sort of a history of the automobile, which is really what automobile museums around the country try to promote. We try to show a bit of an educational lineage of the automobiles from, say, 1903 through 1985, which is really the progression of the automobile and how the technological and the design concepts changed over time, and how windshields were flat and they went to a rounded windshield. We had wooden spoke tires, we went to the iron, wheels. These are all what automobile museums are able to relate to the consumer, versus they go to automobile shows and people actually have an idea that, we'll just go see an automobile show for free at the local park, versus pay money to go and support the local automobile museum and actually learn about the history of the automobile.
To learn even more about the cars housed in its facility, visitors to the Sarasota Classic Car Museum can choose to be escorted by a docent through the museum. Besides the cars, the museum also houses several other noteworthy collections. There is a collection of arcade games from the 20s and 30s, and many of these are still operable. The museum is also home to a collection of musical instruments, some pieces dating back to the 1700s. Housed in a section of the museum called the Great Music Hall, this collection even has on display Thomas Edison's famed diamond-tip phonograph. But by far the greatest attraction remains its automobiles, from the earliest to the latest, many of which, like this one being driven by the famous high-wire performer Arthur Wallenda, are still very much operable. There's the tiny BMW Isetta bubble car, not the ultimate driving machine we associate with the name today. To French oddities like this Citroën de Chevaux. Innovations in design and engineering are also on display. The DeLorean with its gull-wing doors. There are also examples of the Italian cars built by Piero Rivalta, now a local businessman. And there's even a Mercedes that was once owned by John Lennon. The museum is filled with many treasures to discover and enjoy. To ensure that the museum will become an integral part of our community, John Christian has many future plans. One vision is to have the museum as a stopping point for car rallies and meets that take place each year. One such event recently took place, the second Millennium Tour of pre-war cars. And what an event it was! But how does it feel to drive a car so incredibly priceless on the busy streets and highways that surround us?
It's scary, it goes fast, but you always know where the emergency brake is.
Ed Daniels also pointed out a feature on his pre-World War I Rolls-Royce, the engine hood lock. Tradition says it was locked by the factory to show how reliable the engine was. With many of these fine automobiles having amassed well over 1 million miles, it is true that the engines were well built, but the lock wasn't there for that purpose.
They used to say the factory would lock it when they produced it, but not so. They just had a precautionary thing, so nobody would just tinker with the carburetors and all.
The early cars have many interesting features. Pre-World War I cars have very high ground clearance. In light of the poor conditions back in the teens, this was not only important, but very necessary. Perhaps today's SUVs are a throwback to that era. And since no cars were required by law to have taillights in the early years, some of their current owners have had to improvise in order to make them street legal. Automobiles have indeed come a long way since these early cars were made, but the craftsmanship and exquisite designs need to be seen in order to be appreciated. Since not all of us can afford the luxury of owning such a wonderful work of art, go to a place where you can admire these rolling, functional works of art.